Welcome to another exciting Tuesday night on the Rabbit Hole Vibrations podcast. I'm Holly, along here with my co-host Steve, and we are going to be talking tonight about Bob Lazar. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm just peachy.
Yeah, I know. I know you were. Was it electrical or plumbing issues or something you were
Oh,
having
it's a
today?
$15,000 needed new
Of
air
course it is.
conditioning unit. Anybody want to send 15,000? Feel free.
It's
It's always something.
not only but not only is everything like first of all, everything's always expensive now anyway, but everything's always been like when something happens. But even that increase seems to have gone up with the inflationary rates of the grocery store.
That does seem extremely high to me. So I will be getting a few estimates, I'm sure.
Yeah, like I'm really glad I don't own this house that I'm in because I got a letter from the city. I got to say this as we're jumping in here because it was really weird. They came out and there was something wrong with the water line. They've been doing this throughout Denver. They were removing lead water mains for the property owners at the expense of the city in certain neighborhoods. If they were lead for a certain amount of years, some weird stuff that they were doing. And so they came out here and they extracted one. And when they were done, the next day in the mail, this letter arrived that said, okay, we've replaced this now. If anything goes wrong, it's on you, basically. And I'm thinking, that's my landlord's, not me.
Right.
But I was thinking, this sucks because if I owned this house, I would want to know who did that job, not just city workers.
True.
And I would have wanted to, if I'm going to be responsible for it, I would have wanted to pay for it and choose who's going to do it.
Well,
Or
I
at,
think
at
it's that
least
way
choose who's
though
going to do it.
for everyone because anything that happens to my lines on my property are my responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, that is the way it goes. It looks like we have Mandy here. Mandy, how are you tonight? Thanks for joining
Welcome
us
back.
again. Yeah, absolutely. Um, love it when some of these people are coming back together and they keep coming back. So I know we've been screwing around with the times a little bit, you guys, but hey, you all seem to be rolling with it okay. The bottom line is, like we said, if you miss it, it'll drop the next morning. So every Wednesday morning, it'll drop, and I've actually been dropping it at what would be 2 a.m. or 2:01 a.m. Eastern time. And so I'm dropping it at 1 or at 12:01 Mountain Time. Just try an experiment. I'm just doing it right the minute after the new day. So Wednesday, whenever you wake up, is how I'm trying to put it. It'll be there. So if you have auto download going on any of the pod players, that's great, and you will get it Wednesday morning. So if you miss it, you're still gonna be able to catch it. But at the same time, we hope you guys do join us live. Live seems to be a lot more fun. But then the finished product too is also just as good too, because I always forget it gets cleaned up, and it's
Right. It is great though when you have people in the live that are participating and have things to say and questions to ask or input. I love that. So
oh yeah, yeah. Um, well,
anyway, I think our
it looks like
goal
we
is
have a couple other new ones here too.
all
How are
right.
you guys?
Welcome.
How are you guys tonight?
I think our goal is to shoot for Tuesdays at 8 o'clock Eastern. And, because we are human beings that have lives and they happen to get in the way a lot, it may be that we go an hour earlier, an hour later, some days, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much kind of
I mean, I
watchful.
think here's the way I see it. You guys, I really don't edit. I don't edit the pot. I don't edit the audio. Gordos, am I doing that right? How are you? I love your avatar, by the way. Can you see that, Holly?
No, why can't I? That's weird.
It's it says it looks like it's like a presidential campaign flag, and it says Wu Tang is forever.
I don't know why I can't see that. That's really weird.
Like Mandy's is just she just has an M
Yeah,
avatar,
I
the
see her.
default.
Maybe I can't see his yet because he hasn't commented. Maybe once he
Oh,
comments, I'll see it.
oh, I see him in here. Okay. Well, glad to have you guys with us. If others join, cool. If not, then it'll just be us tonight. But what I was saying is, so if I mean, we had a little bit of banter there in the beginning. Holly walked us in, and you know, I won't ever cut out anything in the middle, even for the dropped podcast. I don't edit in that way. I believe in just a single take, but I will cut out the portion where we're just bantering in the beginning for the non-live. So that said, let's jump into this, I guess, tonight. Did you have a chance to check out some on Bob Lazar?
Of course I did.
Did you end up down rabbit holes? Because, guys, as we move along here, for those familiar with Mr. Lazar and his work, or um, his role in so many things, you're going to understand why there. I mean, there's a point where we're going to talk about engineers and how either the Nazi engineers from World War II went to Russia or here. I mean, they literally immediately were stolen, um, and they kind of split them all up, and that's a whole rabbit hole of his own. Like, not the Nazis. What were they doing to people? But what was the craziness with Hitler's like addiction um to all of this? And I know that we'll get into some of the reasons, but also like his artifact addiction and just everything. It's just
So
crazy.
I'm not familiar with that either, so that'll be good for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, that's a tough one because it's like if you're talking about Hitler, everybody's like, wait a minute. Like, I don't want to talk about that, but we won't be. I want to talk more about his affiliation with the occult,
Hmm.
because
Well,
he had teams that were out searching for things while they were moving along the campaign. And
well,
so,
he was pretty evil. So I mean, if
oh yeah,
Satan's ever walked the earth, it's probably him.
yeah. But I
So
mean, yeah, but we'll get into it here. I mean, so if you guys aren't familiar, Bob Lazar was a nuclear or I should say still is. I mean, he's still around. Um, he is getting pretty old. He does have some physical side effects. I'm sure some of which came from this stuff, and I'm not just talking about PTSD. I'm talking about getting a little too close to some things um, that we don't even understand. I don't think anybody did it intentionally to him. Um, but Bob Lazar is a nuclear researcher and physicist, and um, in the very early 80s, he was, I think he was in his early 20s. He started working out of the Los Alamos, New Mexico test site. Same, here we go again, touching rabbit holes, because it's the one right by the Dulce base.
it's a
So
it's a few miles from Roswell, correct?
yeah, it's exactly, it sits between Dulce and Roswell. So
Okay.
it's like, what? Like, how much of this stuff do we got going on here? I think one of the coolest things that we'll hear tonight is that everybody in the town where Bob lived and he would go to work knew Bob only as the guy who had a Honda with a jet engine in it.
Right, because he built that, right?
Yeah,
That's
I
crazy.
just find it amazing. Like, no cop ever. I mean, I guess we're down there. You're talking about like even Truth or Consequences. Like that's probably the biggest city nearby, without going all the way up to Albuquerque. But like it's like like even that's not big. So he's probably in a town of 200-300 people. But like a no sheriff or cops were like, hey man, you can't be flying that Honda around.
Well, I don't think he'd get away with it these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes if you're talking about 200 people and probably all of them maybe 50 are like from there, and but maybe like the rest are all working at the base, or maybe they're all working at the base. I don't know. When you're talking about these kind of towns, I always have to wonder. But let's fast forward. That was 1982, and then he had been doing some work, and he was called to a meeting at McCarran Airport. McCarran Airport is located in Las Vegas, Nevada. and he was told it was to work on advanced propulsion. So they flew him up to what is now Area 51 proper and also known as S4, um, which at that time was a military facility, but Nevada even then had facilities all across the state. And in fact, they were doing really crazy stuff all across the state. Like we'll get into a couple of those too, but it wasn't as locked down as it is now. And yes, we will get into it. But even at this time, when they were bringing Bob up, um, everything that we know to be going on there was going on there, but they weren't that locked down. Like people could get up, people could get up on the mountains of the Sierras and stuff and see down in there. Like there was no shoot to kill if you enter and all this, that, and the other. Um, it was just different. Um, but and especially for all that they were doing. But so Bob, he went into S4, and of course, even as he puts it, he was stoked to work on such projects, and I don't know if we'll really get into his lab partner Barry. There's a whole nother rabbit hole with Barry. Um, but so I guess let me jump to the point where we're talking about um let's skip over how he got in there, because it's just a bunch of interviews with some top level people. So what did Bob learn after he met Barry, which would be his partner in working with all this? For about a month they worked in the labs together, and then Bob was um was brought into the UFO area. Now, he does say in many times that he one or two times had a glimpse of 9 UFOs through open hangars. However, most of the time, as everything is compartmentalized, um, as it is with everything, but especially that kind of stuff. Um, so even though things are compartmentalized and they don't want anybody talking to each other, those doors were never open. So Bob was assigned to one specific UFO.
I did see one time though that he said that he walked in and it just happened to be that all the doors were open and he could see all 9 of them all together, and that they
Right.
were all
That's what I was saying. Yeah. And actually, this gets into Bob's brain a little bit too, though, because a couple times he said that it was a couple times he could see down there. I don't know. Part of that story might have changed because he's trying to just keep it simple. Like if it was 2 or 1, who cares? Bottom line is he was there every day for years. Like, so normally, no, we never got a glimpse. But the way he put it too, that the area was so big, he wasn't even, and some a scientist like that should be able to somewhat gauge, but he wasn't even able to give any gauge on the size of the other crafts, which I can only imagine how big these bays were, you know
right,
um
right.
but nonetheless, they bring him in and there's a UFO. First thing he did when he get on there, I probably would have done the same thing. He actually touched it, and he got reprimanded like hardcore. Like, dude, what? You don't
Right.
do that.
Not allowed to touch.
And right, and not only that, his partner Barry, who was to work with Bob and Bob with Barry, this is how they kept things. And you got to remember, in the science field, it's pretty crazy because um, usually you have all the scientists bringing their notes together to advance the science, but here we have this, everybody works on one specific thing, almost like everything in government, and you're not supposed to talk about any of the parts. They'll put the parts together, but they're gonna let you work on this one thing. So for Bob, it was propulsion. Hey,
Well,
Rocky, glad to have you with us.
he did say that Barry was so excited when he came along that he was going to have this new partner, and he was so excited to tell him about all of this stuff, and it just reminded me of like 2 little kids where one kid is like, oh, wait till I tell you this, and just has this big story to tell him, and he
Well,
finally was
it
able
reminded
to.
it's so funny that that's your example, because mine's totally different. It reminded me of like somebody in a jail in another country, where they don't speak any English, and then they throw somebody in that speaks English and is from the same state as him.
Well, that works too. That works too.
You see what I'm saying? Like after
Uh-huh.
years, and he's like, "Hey, wait, you speak Like, oh my god, I get to
Right.
talk."
Right. Well, imagine that though, with what they worked on, he wouldn't have had anybody to talk to, even if he could talk about it, because no one would understand what he was talking about.
But why wouldn't they have had another scientist with Barry? And they might have. I don't know. Maybe a couple didn't work out, or maybe they just weren't on his level of thinking. Because understand, we are talking about some be break the scope, brilliant minds here.
And how many years does he say that he did work there? Was it 7?
Yeah, something like that. But he was in the system for a while. I mean, we'll get back to what they did to him there too. But he was at Los Alamos for a while too, so over a decade.
But they don't acknowledge that he worked there, correct?
Well, they don't, but there's evidence now. You do know that, right? Like, I was going to get to that near the end, but
Oh,
yeah, I
sorry.
mean, they know, but no, it's cool if we jump around, it's fine. But yes, they have erased all of his data, but it's not like somebody recalling the event. There's actual physical evidence, and it's now on the internet and everything. So like, a couple of great things have happened for Bob, because like a lot of things where people are like, dude, you never worked there. We checked, and now they're looking at it and going, well, wait a minute, we can't cover this up anymore. It's like everything else that's starting to
Well,
come to fruition.
they erased his education also, right, from MIT and the other school that he went to. I can't think off the top of my head. Um, but when
Yes,
people would try to call there and
MIT, and was it
verify,
Stanford? Maybe.
no, it was shoot.
What was it? I don't. Anybody in the chat? Anybody in the chat? Come on.
But when anyone would try to call and verify his education, they couldn't find him.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of
Typical government,
there's a lot there where I'm like, this is just weird anyway, because usually um, we know that people who usually are in Bob's position go missing.
Right. So at least he's alive. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, we even talked about this last week. I mean, in every situation on Earth, this story alone should. I mean, I'm so glad that he is, but you would think that this is the exact definition of somebody you get rid of.
Well, he did have a really good point though when he talked about his education. He said, "Well, do you think that they hired me right out of high school? Obviously, I have this education."
Right. Right.
Yep. Good point.
No, 100%. They expunged his records when they fired him, right? But he's still right. But I think he still went through some years. Thank you, Rocky, for that, by the way. That came in the chat, Holly. So,
Yes, I see.
um, but yeah, so yeah, right. They expunged his records when they fired him, but
And
but
why was he
he
fired?
but now there's like, you can get on the internet and find real proof. Like, it's now documented even. And I'm not just talking about through the documentary that what was it, Jeremy did or whatever, but like, there's documented evidence of Bob. I don't know about the schools, but I do know about like his time at Los Alamos. And in fact, he went back and did a tour and took a couple people through and showed them where he worked. So there's really been a turnaround with that part. Um, but yeah, so after all that, and he's brought in for this, he thinks he's just like king of the world. Obviously, he's in his 20s. He's getting to work on this UFO stuff, and he almost seemed like a non-believer in the beginning, like, or like he didn't care. Like they're like, you're going to be working on stuff, you can't ever talk at all, and he's like, yeah, I don't really care. And it was almost like he didn't believe things, like when they were working on that UFO that he was working on, him and Barry. They found that it was from 30 light years away from ZR3 galaxy, or uh, and the anti-gravity power and stuff like this stuff is like crazy. Like, again, it reminds me of CERN stuff. The government knew that there was some kind of fuel system here, but they had no idea how to use it or how to get to it.
Right. Well, and that
It's
was his
just like,
job.
dude, stop flipping the switch on.
They wanted him to reverse engineer all of that and figure it all out.
Yeah. But I mean, like, when you again, just when you're dealing with something so beyond, and, I guess we will just kind of be bouncing around here a bit because some of my facts come in other places, but I'm sure you picked up, Holly, that they every 8 or 10 years, they kind of pull out some of the different discs and see if science has caught up a little bit. Did you catch any of that? Because, like, basically, like, almost like they sometimes they put some of these away for a while. Like, okay, we've burned our brains out, we got nothing. Put it back and let's pull it out in 8 years and see if science has caught up. That's a really weird thing to wrap your head around.
Right.
Because if they're doing stuff like that, it that again leads me to believe there's been contact. I mean, which I think a lot of us already know, but I'm just saying that that's pretty obvious you've had contact if we just know, because otherwise our governments would never stop pulling it out.
No, I agree. 100%.
So I think it's more like, don't waste your resources, you're not there yet. And I think that it has to be of some intelligence that they believe, or are no government, not just ours, no government would go, okay, Joe, whatever you say, like, this is coming from something that has proven its ability to governments.
Well, they think that the aliens and the humans are working together down in Dulce, so
Yeah. um yeah, and Rocky, give me 1 minute and we will bring you up, so, or you can come up, but give me 1 second here. So, um yeah, I at least wanted to get through this part too, that Bob's first time working inside the UFO, I really find this strange, was that there was no internet connectivity. um it's a rounded shape, no interconnectivity, like, rounded shape, cold to the touch, doesn't get hot even when the emitter's running, and transparent from the inside looking out, almost like glass. um Impenetrable. And no connectivity. Being in production and all I do is amazing to me, because I understand wireless. You can charge a phone these days on just by setting it down on something, but that's electromagnetic. That's different. Um,
right.
but the fact that no cords could be used, clearly that's because of the heat that this thing would put out. But the problem is this thing doesn't no matter how much energy they've pulled from this, it's like ambient temperature to the touch. Like, they could be like turning it on or cooking it for days, and if you touch it, it's just the room temperature. Like, we don't have, I guess I'm saying we don't have things like that,
If we
you
have
know.
contact with them and, they're like, okay, you're not there yet, why don't they help us out and show us the way? What do you
I
think?
I I think that well, I think that it gets to part of that thing about, I mean, part of that is, are we being observed or are they trying to help us? I it's interesting to look at the timeline too, because I don't know if it was Bob's or not, but there was one of the UFOs was said to have been found in an archaeological dig, and there we go to the Hitler thing I was referring to a little back. Like, what? You're out doing an archaeological dig for dinosaurs and you find a UFO?
Yeah, I do remember seeing that as well.
Like, that's really strange. Um I mean whatever. And I guess, I mean, there was a time that, yeah, we need to hide probably even thought we need to um hide this from people. Especially that kind of thinking in the 40s and 50s, like, geez, we barely have gasoline cars. What's this
Right.
stuff? But at the
Right.
same time, what I did find very random, and now here I go to what I was talking about in the testing, even in the 80s, when Lazar was taken up to Area 51S4, was that this is really messed up. That we were doing, like, basically nuclear testing underground in Nevada. Like, we were basically emitting things, we were blowing things up. Okay, so that means that I mean, we know that it was, Roswell, if date is correct, that happened. But I think we all know in this community the 80s were like the orgy of UFOs. And,
Right, when it
yeah,
really exploded.
right, like everybody was claiming that they were abducted, and then they were dubbed schizophrenic. And yeah, there are some schizophrenics who take this too far, and that is duly noted, but it is not by any means what they were making. So they were telling people in the 80s, if you were saying you were abducted or anything like that, you were schizophrenic and you were put on medication and stuff to just shut you up. These days, more people than not believe in this.
Oh, especially I would say concerning
I mean,
the
even our
events of the
governments
last couple
admitted
of
it. Even
years,
our
right?
governments admitted it to us.
Right, with the
I mean, at this
congressional
point,
hearings.
they've had to go, okay, guys, and listen, we're just going to call it this UAP thing, and we didn't lie to you. We just didn't never talk. You didn't ever ask about UAPs. You asked about
Right,
UFOs,
right. We talked about UFOs, but yeah, now that
right?
UAP, they just changed the name, so it's something totally new.
Yeah. Oh, Rocky, I saw your thing come up. I was trying to click OK, and oh, there it is. You can come on up, Rocky.
Hey,
Good.
welcome.
Good. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. You're only hitting a certain amount of it right now because this has been going on since the 1920s,
Oh yeah,
and you know,
we do an hour and change each week. So if you can imagine the amount, both of us do podcasts and have for years, but this one's a joint one between us, and so we're only going to be able to hit so much in each one. So it's going to
I
bounce
understand.
around a lot.
I understand that, but they've been having people report alien abductions since the 20s that actually hit the newspapers or got limelight.
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and
Again, when I made that
it
joke and I said it was like the orgy in the 80s, I just meant like
well, it
there was a
was.
lot.
It was really heavy in the 80s, but it started gaining a lot of momentum in the 70s too. A lot of people were having these different things going on, and it's like now you hear about it, and sometimes you don't know if somebody's trying to draw attention to themselves or if they're actually saying what they experienced. Were they doing
Sure.
DMT before they came up with that? I
Yeah,
mean,
no, for sure.
but something that people have to understand about this is that they've always been here because back in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
50 or in the 1400s and hell back to the 1200s they had pictures with UFOs painted into them and nobody knew what the heck they were until later on,
Oh
Right.
yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
I have
always
heard
been
that.
there.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably going to be a whole nother episode, but Holly and I were talking about last week, I think it was, even the hieroglyphics that showed,
yeah,
like, you'd see a bunch of like very poorly carved out obviously just, stick figure types. And then you'd see something very tall and a little more detailed, clearly some kind of alien form, and then even things in the sky. And yeah, I mean,
yeah. You look at the stuff that they have on the pyramids. I mean, they have our boat and our helicopter and our tank carved on the daggone pyramids. And it's not a chip and draw picture either. It's carved in there really nice. And you can actually look at it. So that looks like an Abrams tank, and that looks
yeah,
like a daggone Cobra helicopter. You
yep.
know,
I
that
mean, I'm out in Colorado, and the Denver airport is a whole nightmare of its own, and it's
oh
got
yeah,
Freemason work and it seems like they always want to put their stamp on the things like that. They're like, don't look at
yeah.
this and don't Google it, but we're gonna put a plaque on it.
I was actually stationed in Aurora, Colorado, when they were building the airport,
Okay.
and
Yep.
Yeah, that's another
it's
rabbit
like
hole we're
this
going to
thing
go
was
down.
taking for yeah, this thing is taking forever. They ain't going to get it finished.
Yeah.
And then they got it finished. But I'm up in Montana where there's a lot of stuff going on up here about UFOs and
Oh, I
they
bet.
on energy areas and tunnels. I've
Oh
talked
yeah.
to a lot of different people while I've been up here. I've been up here about 27 years, and I've met some interesting things, and I've actually went through some lore that the Indians talk about, and
Nice.
it's like you know it's all been documented years and years ago. and people are now starting to talk about it again.
Yeah, well,
So yeah,
I mean, how could you not be talking about it again? Now, I think there's a lot of we started here on Bob Lazar, and I think there's a lot of stuff. Even Lazar said that, hey, listen, a lot of these people are worth listening to, but a lot of them are not worth listening to. So, of
yeah,
course, in the TikTok world we live in, of course, there's going to be some people out there just trying to spin some views and things like that and
yeah,
make it look real and whatnot. But then there's the true, the Stephen Greers and the people who, even though he's a little more, on this, just on the path of of like,
he's on the
bookkeeping
path
all
of
of this.
technology that we're getting out of it, and that's
Yeah,
what
yeah. I
his
mean,
focus
it's like
is.
everybody's belief in this is almost, it's almost like, different fields of study,
Yeah,
because it's like
yeah,
somebody gets like, oh my god, this interests me, well, that's what that person's interested in, and somebody else is like, well, this is what I like about it. And that, I love
yeah.
that, I love that. But I think that, I was saying to Holly before you came up, I honestly think we're at a point now where easily, globally, more people recognize or would say, of course there's aliens and UFO
Yeah.
technology, than wouldn't.
That's the thing. People are starting to get enlightened into the might want to call it the high tech matrix. We have advanced so daggone fast in the last 60 years that people don't even realize it because they just went along with it. You know,
Well, I think
even
once our government started coming out and acknowledging things, and we had the congressional hearings last summer, once
yeah,
all that happened, I think that really turned a lot of people to say, "Oh,
oh
okay,
yeah,
well, that isn't just a
yeah.
National Enquirer, BS."
But that was only a small portion though. That was a very
Right, but
small
I do think it
portion
helped
just
to
to
change.
start an appetite.
Right, I think it just helped to change people's minds that were really set on, "Oh, that's just a bunch of silliness,"
Yeah.
that they started to
People
think
don't
twice.
people don't realize they've been telling us in the movies. You
Oh
know,
yeah, it's
they've
funny
been
you
telling us
say that,
about all
because
this stuff in the
I was
movies, and
I was putting
and
together,
right now,
there's so many movies you can look at, but I was specifically thinking about, I didn't have time to look it up before we started here tonight, but I was trying to remember what year Close Encounters came out in, because
Close Encounters
I'm
came out in the
in the
let's see,
80s,
yeah,
but I
it
can't
came
remember
out
what
in
it
I think it was
was.
82.
See, that is unbelievable. If it is 82, 83, that's really strange,
Yeah,
because it all bases around what was going on with Lazar, and Lazar was just getting his story out, was just starting to talk to some people. And I don't know, it seems way too ahead of its time. And it's like an 82 movie, not remade, but right now can just be played while you're like reading about Bob Lazar, and it would all
It
make
came
sense.
it came out
yeah,
in
and
'77. Actually, I just looked it up.
that
Se-
that
77.
there was another movie too that came out around the same time, later on, I guess, in the late 80s. It was a guy who came to Earth in a spaceship with a robot. I think it was Keanu Reed. I can't say his name. The guy who
Keanu.
plays
Yeah.
John Wick.
Yeah. Keanu
He was in
Reeves.
a movie where he was a man who came here, or a man form that came here with a big robot, and he was trying to get people to turn a certain way, and they was giving him a bunch of flack. They were trying to, mess with him and everything, and his robot ended up tearing up a bunch of stuff. And we could see that tomorrow. I mean,
I mean,
Escape from New York is happening right now.
there's a David Bowie movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, if you go way
Yeah.
back. Like,
Jeff
I mean,
Bridges had one back in the late '70s, early '80s. I think it was called Starman.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
mean,
they've
obviously,
been telling us about this.
obviously people can think up this stuff too. But I mean, like, so like Starman and some of the other ones we named. But when Holly looked it up, and it's 1977 that Close Encounters came out, I haven't seen it in forever. I actually want to go back and rewatch it,
Me too.
because now, knowing all the things that I've experienced, know myself, I want to go watch it again, because I think it was beyond, like, so movies sometimes are beyond their time, but this
Yeah,
one was beyond its dimension. I mean, like, it was, I don't know if I remember it right. It was very, like, I can't think of what his name is. Oh gosh, from
I can't
Jaws.
either.
Um, Not Roy
Oh,
Schneider, but the other actor, great actor, been in a lot of things, but he was in Close Encounters, and the way that his mind is after the experience, and he keeps doing the clay of Devil's Thumb, and it's just,
Yeah,
I need to go back and rewatch that movie.
I can't. I I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. It's
Yeah.
aggravating. Tell when you get old.
No, I can
But
even tell you.
anyway,
I mean, yeah, he's been in a lot.
yeah,
So,
a, a lot of people don't understand that what we have going on right now has been told to us years and years ago, but nobody wants to look at the old movies because they're not as exciting. They're not shoot 'em up and all this other crap. And people have to look back and look at what they showed us in the 60s, 70s, and 80s to understand where we're headed to right now. I mean, look at Soylent Green. Some places in the world now, they're turning their people into fertilizer and spreading it on the fields.
mhm.
They're doing euthanasia in
Canada.
Canada right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
really?
I
Huh, that's
saw.
news to me.
It's no, they're, I can't remember what they're called either, Holly. It's really weird. $16,000,
yeah,
and you go into a pod and you pass away gently.
yeah.
Wow.
They just
So if you're,
basically put you to sleep.
obviously it's not some suicide machine. It's more of a, what was, I'm not even from Michigan. Here I go blanking out again, but Doctor Death, Kevorkian.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so I remember
They
him
actually
doing this kind of stuff
legalized
out
his
of his car.
practice.
Yeah.
they, they've actually legalized it. Oh, you're suffering from a terminal illness. I'm here to help you. Go
Right,
ahead
it's
and lay
like,
down in the pod.
it's just like pot in all these states, now it's legal. And now you can legally kill people. Like,
Yeah,
Right. Eventually, it all
it,
becomes legal.
but again,
just
like, this is what it's supposed to be. I actually learned about that in the pods out of a horrible story. But then I learned a bunch of good stories too, like people with terminal cancer who really wanted to plan a little better than just die. And I, I'm not saying how could I judge that? I can't. I don't think I would do it myself, but like, I can't judge why somebody might or whatnot. But somebody up there was using this, was had like a GoFundMe or whatever it is in Canada. It was a different one, but GoFundMe type, to raise enough money to go and have a pod because of and it was in the news. It was in a regular news article. But he couldn't afford to live in his efficiency apartment anymore, and he couldn't
yeah.
afford to take care of his cat. And he was like 52. He had no, like, nothing that was like, um he wasn't dying, nothing. And he was doing
To
a
just give
GoFundMe
up.
to just let him give up and kill himself.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just
That,
found it, like, so
that,
bizarre. I was like, dude, what the hell?
Certainly, though, they have to meet certain qualifications to do that, I would assume.
no, they don't.
Actually,
They don't have to meet
that's
a
the whole
certain
thing, Holly, is
requirement.
that, I mean, maybe they have to check you, make sure you're of sound mind, but what does that check really look like? But at the same, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, they legalized it because they were saying, "Hey, you have the right to do this."
The WHO already deemed this as useless eaters because they're going to replace us with robots. They're going to keep certain people, and the rest are going to be considered useless eaters. They've already said it. It's on record.
Yeah.
And we're facing right now what I have been able to recover right now was 12 resets. Gigantic resets has happened. And the last
Hmm.
gigantic reset was in the late 1400s into the 1500s, and then it turned. and became the Renaissance. Before
Hmm.
that, nobody went anywhere. They stayed home, and then the Renaissance came, and we had all these people who were inventing things like Galileo, and we had all these explorers going out finding new land, which is already occupied, but they were finding new land that they never knew about.
Was
We're
Tesla in
going
the
through the same
Renaissance?
crap, huh?
Was Tesla in the Renaissance?
Tesla?
Yeah.
No, he's late
No.
1800s. He
Okay. Yeah.
worked
Yeah.
with
Okay.
Thomas Edison
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
till he
Okay.
pissed. He got PO'd at Thomas Edison because he said, if you can fix this light bulb for me and make it work better, I'll pay you $10,000. He made it work
Right.
better, and then Thomas Edison said I was only joking.
Right. Well, I know that
I mean,
what is it, WH, like the power or whatever. I know they were hella pissed with Tesla because he said that, well, we can just pull the energy from the sky, and they were like, "What? No, no, no. We make a lot of money on this stuff."
uh, Westinghouse actually told him, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it.
Yeah.
That's its
Yeah.
exact
I
words. If
mean,
we
can you
can't put a
imagine
meter on it, we don't want it.
how different our world would be and could be if they had only gone his way instead?
Well, yeah, but Tesla wasn't the first one. Why did we bomb the crap out of Europe? It wasn't because of the Nazis. Yeah, they were a part of it. They destroyed a lot of ancient buildings that were a reason for them being there. Not just homes, but big buildings that were built precisely. And when you delve into that rabbit hole, you find out that there's things that were going on. The way they were built were exactly like the control room and the dump area in a daggone atomic power plant. But they weren't using atomic rods. They were drawing ether. Some buildings have plug-ins on them where you can go in and plug in. And some cities had already had spectacular lighting in them during the 1800s. Hell, New York at one time was lit up before we had the invention of power lines. But nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah. The other thing, I
It's
always
all
get a
about power,
little,
money, and control is all it's about.
oh,
For
of course
sure.
it is. I think we all know that. Even the
Yeah.
government, that's what we were talking about this earlier. I mean, even the government is like now, like, oh yeah, we'll tell you a little bit. Here's what we know. There are UAPs. And
Yeah.
we don't know what the hell you were talking about with those UFO things. We never heard of that. But there are UAPs. You just never asked us about UAPs. But really all they're doing is
Well, actually,
finally
the
just going,
government,
okay, we're gonna let you into the box a little.
actually, the government is just wiping off the breadcrumbs, and people saying, "What's this? Is this for us?" Oh yeah, that's some stuff about some this and that. You can go ahead and take it.
Oh yeah, and for as
I
but for
mean,
as
we're,
worthless
we're
as it
getting
is,
crumbs.
it's one thing. It's a nice thing to finally, at least, that's what I'm saying about more than half the people believing now. I don't think. I
Yeah.
mean, I think even to be honest, I would even think more. I don't know how to break that down exactly.
But a lot of people are critically thinking now, where they just followed along with what was going on, and now they're starting to find this information either by a TikTok video or Facebook or whatever. And I got kicked off a lot of platforms already, but people are starting to figure it out for themselves that, oh, so and so was right. I've been called a liar all my life because I dealt well into stuff that people didn't want to understand. And now they're calling me daily and asking me for advice on how to do stuff I were trying to show them how to do. And I'm not talking about building a house. I'm talking about how to grow, how to pick wild vegetables and wild items to eat.
Be
And
self-sustaining.
yeah, and people are now starting to go, I really wasn't listening that hard. I thought it was all crap, but now I'm seeing the light. Can you show me again? You know? And that's the way a lot of people are.
Yeah, yeah.
He called me a conspiracy theorist since 1970. My teacher told me I wasn't going to be worth a crap. I retired at 42. Okay. I wasn't going to be worth a darn. I was going to be a trash man the rest of my life. And I retired at the age of 42 out of the military and started a business. Then I retired from that business. And now I'm just sitting back here looking at all this stuff that I had prepared for. And everybody's looking at me like, why didn't you tell us? I said, I did. You just weren't listening. You know, you don't have to be a, a prepper for
I
the
was just going to compare it to that.
apocalypse.
I was
But
actually thinking
if
of,
you,
and I was actually thinking about those people in a good light. Like there's 3 different reality shows on preppers out right now. I mean, that's telling you something too. Like they're not
yeah,
just making fun of them, guys. They're like pointing out, hey, look how many people are doing this.
and they're also taking people who learned the old stuff. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, I hung around a lot of old people, and they told me how to do things and showed me how to do things. And I'm sitting here going, "Wow, this is cool," but will I ever need it? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how many people do you know can graft a tree like an apple tree, take the small limbs off of an apple tree that are going to bear the the buds and graft them to a crabapple tree because the crabapple tree is stronger, can hold the weight. Not too many people.
Mm-mm.
It's not an
No.
everyday thing, but an old man showed me how to do it, and I grafted 25 damn trees that summer.
Wow.
But people weren't into that. It's like, oh, I want to listen to rock and roll music. I want to go skating or whatever,
Oh,
you know,
but now, I
back in the
mean,
'70s.
now it's even worse.
I know it. I know it
Now
is.
they're just plugged into the devices. So I mean, at least generations past tried. We tried. I tried.
Yeah. I mean, the majority of people right now don't know how to change a tire, let alone check their oil, you
Mm-mm.
know?
Yeah. No, it's
In my
it's
business,
definitely
I change a lot of light bulbs for people. They say, oh, my light's not working. And I go over there
Change the
and
light
bigger than
bulb.
shit, the light bulb's burned out. And I change the light bulb. And they go, wow, what was wrong with this? The bulb needed changed. Had
yeah,
power everywhere else. No breakers tripped. You just need a light bulb.
That
yeah.
is funny.
Um, but yeah, what was it? Here was something I was just looking at right now too. The thing about I had to look it up, Holly. The thing about the 8 to 10 years bringing the technology back out of Area 51 is you can find it by if you I think if you Google like the Wilson memo or the Wilson leak memo, and not it'll try and do Wilson and memo turns into a whole long word, but that's not it. It's got to be the Wilson memo. And if you find that, it's a scientist talking to an admiral about the 8 to 10 year cycle and bringing the technology back out to see if science had caught up, which I just find so bizarre. Like,
Yeah.
unless it's just a resource thing. Like, again, something wiser than us, and even our government knows it. They've proven it, and they've said, "Listen, we're not there yet because otherwise we know our government. They'd be ripping this apart 24/7."
Yep.
But if they've been told by something they believe and that has shown its power in one way or another, listen, you guys, just pull it out every 8 to 10 years and see if you're caught up yet. And they knew that resource was freed up. And I'm sure for a long time they tested it and just kept working on it and realized, no, man, maybe. And so, maybe they have stepped up to that level. And that tells me too that even though it's not public, our governments know to work with other beings on this planet.
Just think about it for a minute. Our government won't tell us anything. If they were going to be transparent, they never do be transparent. And Bob Lazar worked on some spacecraft out in
Yep.
Area 51. How do we know those weren't given to our government like they were with the Chinese and the Russians and a few other countries? They were
Right.
given
Well, I
to us
mean,
because
and
they
and we
wanted
know
a
we've built
ability
them
to,
too.
huh?
And we know that we've like mocked some up and like built fake ones out at Area 51 and tried flying
Right.
them. And
Because we've had fake abductions.
Well,
Well,
I
yeah, but
actually meant ones that we
we
just failed on, where we tried to recreate what they have, and
Right.
yet we
well,
don't even understand the power source, but we think it's going to work.
we did do some of the recreating. How do you
Yeah.
think we came up with stealth technology for the aircraft?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that's something that they, if we can make this work, we can put it on this or that,
Hmm.
but they don't want to do it to everything. And put it on all the tanks and all the airplanes, and they just want to do a little bit at a time. Just put it on the F-22 or the F-35 or whatever, And they always say, whenever you have a big explosion like that, as far as technology goes, that we have gained leaps and bounds. No, we were given leaps and bounds. We were allowed to harness that energy or harness that daggone technology as a gift. But
Right.
what was the price for it?
Right. Wouldn't you think that the Holly, what do you think? Wouldn't you think that our shoddy governments around the world, wouldn't you think when an intelligent civilization comes here, they would come to greet those leaders and be like, "You guys are full of shit," and and not
Yeah.
tell them all the secrets? Dude, wait a minute.
Well,
Can't
yeah,
trust you shady people at all, dude.
they're spoon feeding. They're spoon feeding the governments like they spoon feed us, like our governments are spoon feeding us. Here, you want some technology? Here's what we want. They give them some technology, and it's the rave. Like TVs now. You have a TV now that actually spies on you. Where did we get that technology? Who came up with that idea to make a little computer chip? Those technologies have
Oh,
been passed around for thousands of years. If you
Yeah,
look
we've
at the
talked on the
maps
show
of,
about the TVs before, about the
say,
TVs and the phones listening and all of that.
when you mean when somebody says I'm going to go live off the grid and you just get to laugh your ass off.
well,
No, I'm talking about when you're talking about okra, and then all of a sudden, all the ads on your phone are about okra.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Your phone spies on you. Everything spies on you nowadays. I mean, that's the way the government wants it because they want to transition us into a new technology. And sometimes technology in the bad hands is the worst thing we could ever do. But,
No
yeah.
doubt.
do we have
And
a choice? I mean,
we're being introduced to it, like Holly said, in the way of advertising. Though I had that happen
yeah,
to me too, being around a friend who had just gone to Branson, Missouri. I've never been to Branson. I've never spoken of Branson. I've never
yeah,
wanted to go to Branson, and then nothing against anybody from Branson. I just have never had a dream to go there. And I was talking with him around it, and those ads came up. Well, I'm not even sure it's so much about that. It's more about people like the three of us right now knowing that our phones do that, and that's just common knowledge. Oh yeah, of course, that's how
yeah,
we get our ads and stuff, because that's going to allow the technology we don't want to be introduced on how they do it.
yeah.
Exactly.
Just like CBD. Everybody,
Yeah,
oh, cashless money system. Oh, it'd be great. Well, no, the government's going to know everything you buy,
yeah.
down to the water bottle you got.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to look at it not just in what's being produced or being shown to us right now. We have to look at also, and it's what I'm saying, critically think about what they're doing. Back in the 60s, they had Star Trek. I grew up with Star Trek. And what did they have that we didn't have until the 1980s?
What's
A
that?
flip phone.
Oh,
Yeah, but it was
Beam me
also
up, Scotty. There's no intelligent
yeah,
life forms here.
it also was a radio too. It
Well,
wasn't
yeah.
really, it's just
And you
because it
have
didn't
that
have
now on your
buttons or anything. It
phone.
was just,
well, that's true. We
It,
do kind of have that on our phone. If you have
we
Spotify
have,
or
yeah.
Apple Music, whatever.
You don't have to pump up. All you have to do is say, call Bill, and the daggone thing goes to your contacts and rings him. If you want to, instead of type, you just talk into your phone and it sends out your message alphabetically, and you don't have to punch any keys. I mean, that that's what it's come down to.
Yep.
All the crap they've showed us before, they knew about it. They were kind of bringing it in slowly, and then now it's dumped into our lap, and it's like, oh, I can't live without that. That's what they want. More people get killed walking across the street because they're staring at their stupid phone
Oh
Right.
yeah.
than there
Well,
ever has been.
and that's, I think, where the preppers come in, because they're looking at our world now and like, okay, what if all the satellites go down and we suddenly have no phones, no computers, and we're back, in 1970? The people that have
Or
not
just the
lived
grid
that,
goes
they
down
wouldn't know what
too.
to do. Yeah, if the grid goes down, they wouldn't know what to do.
Oh, we lost him there.
Oh,
Let's
we're probably
where are
getting
we
close
at?
to our time. Yeah.
107? Let's let me see if I can jump us back. I don't know what happened there. Rocky, we lost you. Maybe we'll get you back next time here. It was nice having you too, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Always trying to get people to join us. We want to get to know all you guys. Um,
Absolutely.
so, and some of you, like I see Mandy out there still, like just going. You're awesome. You're like so far, like you. I think you've caught most of our things too, and but yeah, let me see where we're at so I can try and bring us back here a little bit to. There was so I did want to relate this, and it kind of relates to some of the things Rocky was saying when he was up here. So Lazar, this is probably a great place to kind of try and end this week on, because I think this is a great quote from Bob Lazar. If you have real force fields around crafts, you win. And that goes back to his comment about we can observe. This is also a quote: we can observe the effects of gravity, but we have no idea what it is. Those two come together, and he says all of it is about gravity, like anti-defense system. Like he thought he was working on, we're going back to the beginning now, propulsion systems. And what it ended up being is that now all of the different compartmentalized things are all into the weaponization territory. Did you feel like that, Holly? Or
No, I did. I did.
like,
If
like
you
it's
feel like that we have, because we did totally get off the topic tonight, but if you feel, if you want to do this another week and continue this on, if you have a lot more information, I'm sure you do, we can continue this next week and put off what I was talking about for another week if you'd like. That's totally up to you.
no, I mean, I think we'll be talking about Lazar when we do some other UFO things.
Okay. I just wanted to put
Um,
that out there in case.
in fact, I'll try and find one that'll tie into Lazar so we can get back, we can do a combination.
I
You
do want to know
know,
though,
it,
why did he get fired? Because I did not get to that part.
why did he get fired?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but well, so did you not catch the part about them coming and talking to him about a conversation he had had with his wife?
No.
Okay, so they pulled Bob aside, and they said, hey, you record, or here we have, and he even said, like, dude, we all knew the phone calls were recorded and this and that or whatever. But this again goes to what our guest that jumped up for a little bit here today was saying, was that they were monitoring through devices even then, because he wasn't telling her over the phone, he told her in person. And they came up to him and said, hey, maybe it wasn't a phone call, they said you were talking to, they had a recording of it, in fact. So maybe it
They
was like his
probably had his house bugged.
right, his house bugged or wired or whatever it would be in that time. But he shared the story, like a node, which he had probably done on several occasions, just about how was your day, honey? And it was kind of like, hey, not to ask me that. That was supposed to be the answer. But I think on occasion it wasn't the answer. And they came and they
Wow.
had this evidence of, well, what'd you say here? Well, what do and he thought it was like that he was just being kind of reprimanded, like, okay, well, I get it. I won't ever do that again. It's my wife, like, and so it became, no, this isn't a reprimanding. This is where it ends. And that's why I was saying to you, I'm surprised he's still around, because that seems like, to me, that right there would have been the moment they could have just ended him.
Right. I'm surprised they didn't too.
And please, like, don't get me wrong. I'm so glad they didn't. But at the same time, to me, when I'm hearing this story, I'm like, dude, did something go wrong? Like, I would think that's the command to end him and his wife.
Right.
Because again, also he wasn't approached at work. He was approached at home with his wife. So it's like, if those people, if the Men in Black types show up at your door, and and they're telling you were talking to her about stuff you're not supposed to be saying to anybody. And then it was shortly after that all of his records were erased. No, you did not
That's
work
what I
at
was going to
Willis
say.
Avenue.
That
No,
is
you did
probably
not go to
why.
college. No, you are not it was like, what?
Yep.
You
Yep.
talking about?
That totally makes sense now why they did that, because yeah, that makes sense.
So then he really started leaking, because he knew a couple of reporters, specifically one in Vegas. I can't recall the name, and some other people who had for years wanted information from him. He wasn't doing it.
Well, he probably figured that he probably was going to get taken out and needed to get the information out there.
Right. So, again, like all the rabbit holes we go down, the bottom line is, like, even the way whistleblowers come about are different. Like Stephen Greer and Bob Lazar are night and day different in the way they whistleblow. Like Stephen Greer is all about it. He wants to do it. I'm going to bring it right in your face. Bob Lazar was like forced into it. He's a scientist at heart.
Right. He said he didn't really want to be in the public.
Right. He doesn't want anything to do with this crap.
Right.
He was just happy working on it, being part of it.
Right.
So, there was even, I'm sure you caught some of it. There was even times he took some of his friends, like, I think there was 2 occasions he took friends out to the UFO of his that they would test from time to time, at least just trying to get it to get off the ground, which they could. And then basic turns, nothing in the air, barely at all. But like, he would take his friends out to those. This is how unsecure Area 51 was.
Isn't that crazy?
Because Bob Lazar is, and this is probably how we'll end tonight. Bob Lazar is the reason why Area 51 S4 became a shoot to kill facility if you enter from miles out. Like, they don't even say halt, they don't arrest you, they shoot you beyond a gate. And that gate is so far out now. Before that, you could drive right in like an army base. Just get a guest pass, all that kind of crazy stuff. No joke. You couldn't go see a UFO, obviously, because that was S4, but you could get into Area 51. Now it's a shoot to kill thing. That all flipped when Bob started talking.
Right. Because then
that's when it went into a lockdown facility. So, yeah, that's what I got. I guess, we could, which one of the 2 are we going to do next week?
Let's see. Why don't we kind of stay on this path and go with crop circles?
All right. Yeah. And then if I have, I'll kind of look through what we did get through and whatnot. And if we have any other, if I have anything I missed, or kind of maybe we'll do some kind of lead in, with like at least some kind of UFO tie if there needs to be. I don't even know if there does. Again, everything interconnects, so it doesn't even matter. Like, some of the stuff we'll get into is going to be completely variant topics. Like,
I've only scratched the surface with crop circles and what I know about them and what I've looked up, but right. So I'm not even sure which way I go on that. what I
I
believe.
think I think it's
So,
really there's tons out there in crop circles.
oh, I know. I started reading one night and I was like, oh boy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll get into it this week and
Yeah. Holly likes to do those
figure
things
out
that
where I
keep her
land.
up all night, terrified.
Oh no, I'm not scared. Nothing scares me.
Um, but hey, thank you all for joining us. Join us back here next week on the Rabbit Hole Vibrations podcast. And if you missed it, guys, you're obviously listening on the replay. We are live every Tuesday night. That time is kind of to be determined. It seems like at least for now, it's 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays. Um, Tuesdays, I feel fairly certain saying is going to stay the day. But the time might vary a little, and I don't mean it's going to be 12 hours up, but just work with us here a little bit while we figure that out. But we'll tell you the week before. So next week, again, probably be at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. And
Sounds good.
as the crow crows, we are out of here. Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week.